With Spyro and Crash Bandicoot, we've seen many remakes of older games. Or how about those PC titles from the early 90s? A time with games like Dune, Wolfenstein, and the early Need for Speed games. But there are also franchises that have long been forgotten. Games that were amazing but haven't survived the transition to newer generations of hardware. Here are 10 forgotten MS-DOS classics that deserve more love. Where console gamers had platformers like Super Mario and Sonic, the genre was a bit less popular on PC. However, there was one franchise that stood out above the rest: Commander Keen. It's a series created by id Software, but that company focused on 3D shooters when Wolfenstein and Dune were launched. Commander Keen moved to the background and ultimately was forgotten. But there's a huge legacy here, about a young boy going on space adventures with his spaceships built from home furniture. We'd be up for the idea to acquire your own tools, build a spaceship, and traverse into space in search for adventure, all while pretending to be sleeping.
A beginning is a very delicate time. Know then that it is the year 10,191.
Frank Herbert's Dune franchise is best known for the books and the film. Dune 2 was the game that kickstarted the RTS genre, but we want to highlight the first Dune game. This space adventure combined traditional adventure game elements with strategy. You need to acquire resources to drive away the Harkonnen from planet Dune. It was an amazingly deep game that went the extra mile to provide interest in gameplay.
I understand that the final attack is imminent. Okay.
Above everything, it gave a good example of what the Dune series is all about. In general, we believe Dune as a series would do very well as a video game. There already is a new movie in the works. If only game companies and the license holders would talk. Perhaps Bethesda can do something here. When SimCity turned out to be a major hit, many companies tried making sim games. But there was only one true master, and those were the developers from Maxis. They made SimAnt, a simulation game in which you control ants. The ultimate goal is to conquer the garden and drive away the red ants and homeowners. We're not sure if this idea would be fun in modern times, but we still like the idea of diving into the world of insects. Marvel's Ant-Man is doing well, and so did Deadly Creatures on the Wii, so why not give it a shot? Syndicate is a tactical strategy game in which you control 4 cyborg agents that need to take down enemies. You need to research and develop new technology, conquer territory, collect taxes, and become stronger and stronger. The success of games like Wasteland 2 and Pillars of Eternity would suggest there's room for a true continuation of this franchise. And no, we're not talking about that shooter from 2012, but a game that stays true to the gameplay mechanics of the original game. Seeing the current revival of cyberpunk in pop culture would only suggest there's space for a team of cyborgs to conquer the city in the name of the Syndicate. Before Epic Games worked on games like Unreal, Gears of War, and Fortnite, it had a small team that made a platform game called Jackrabbit. The game is set on a planet where there's been a war between turtles and rabbits. When the evil turtle leader kidnaps the hare princess, Jazz comes into action. It's a side-scrolling action game that could be nicely translated to modern gameplay. Super Mario is still huge, and Sonic Mania was very well received after years of disappointment. We're pretty sure there's room for another platforming adventure hero, even when it's a green rabbit wielding a gun. In terms of shoot-em-ups, there have been many iconic games. Most PC gamers from the 90s will remember Raptor: Call of the Shadows. This vertical scrolling shooter was full of action and really had you on the edge of your seat. Killing enemies gets you money, which you need to upgrade your shield and your weapons. It's a simple mechanic that was very entertaining. This game is available on PC and the App Store, but we'd like to see a continuation on the classic game brand. Perhaps a VR game would be a nice idea. Four years before the world fell in love with Lara Croft, we had Jill of the Jungle. This platforming game from 1992 featured a female heroine and served as a competitor to Commander Keen and the early Duke Nukem games. Epic Mega Games had their first big hit with this platformer. This would enable the company to create Jazz Jackrabbit and Unreal. Jill of the Jungle is very straightforward, but features some very nice mechanics, including the ability to change into animals. Just imagine a Tomb Raider type of game featuring an Amazon beauty who can change into animals to take down enemies and save the jungle. That sounds like a great concept to us. Just like Raptor, Tyrion is a vertical scrolling shooter. The game has seen some releases on the Game Boy and was made available for free a decade ago. Even though now mostly forgotten, Tyrion was actually a big name in the 90s. The game had a backstory, and in the campaign you could unlock new weapons. Updated versions of this game included a two-player mode. Now that's where Tyrion gets interesting, because even though there are plenty of couch co-op games out there, we really need more high-quality vertical shooters. Talk about early first-person shooters and everybody mentions Doom and Wolfenstein. But what about Heretic? This first-person game stands out because of its focus on magic and the occult. It had an inventory and was the first game that allowed looking up and down. Of course, you can play Skyrim in first person, but that's not quite the same. We'd much rather see a revival of Heretic. Imagine a fast-paced first-person shooter with RPG mechanics that's all about shooting fireballs and melting faces. And sure, we're fine if someone makes a sequel to Hexen as well, which is basically a follow-up to Heretic anyway. Having a level editor is something quite common nowadays, but back in the early 90s there was no internet to share your creations. That's why Stunts really stood out. This racing game was full of jumps and loops, and it provided a level editor in which you could make your own tracks and race them afterwards. Trackmania is the modern follow-up to the foundation laid by Stunts. But what made Stunts even more fun was the addition of character-driven vehicles, each with their own personality and driving style. Stunts really had a sense of speed, and it was just a great racing game. If our prayers aren't answered, we can still play Trackmania, which is the next best thing. These 10 forgotten MS-DOS classics look pretty bad on big modern screens, but trust us when we say that these were excellent games in their days. Have you ever played old DOS games? You know, there's an entire database online where you can find thousands of games that have been made available to be played for free. Follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, and make sure you let us know.